just heard from Major Burt Mississauga, who's running for the U.S. Senate against Mark Warner. He's a Republican nominee. We got a chance to catch up with him. And now I've got another great guest joining us right now. Is the 45th governor of the great state of Wisconsin. He's also the president of the Young Americans Foundation. Scott Walker joining us here on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Good to hear your voice again.
Thank you so much. I got a chance to spend time with you at Mount Vernon a couple of weeks ago during the Young Americans Foundation kickoff, the big conference. I was laughing. I was actually a YAFfer years ago, and I went to that conference. I won't tell anybody how long ago it was, but it was a while ago. But I got a chance to see the enthusiasm from the students there. So I wanted you to come on the show because there's a lot of parents right now that, you know, their kids worked hard, they studied, they got great SAT scores, they got great GPAs, they got into these great colleges, but now they're going off for the very first time on their own. And I know we have a lot of parents and grandparents in our audience that they're kind of concerned in the back of their head of sending them my family's best. What am I going to get back when they come home for Christmas break? Are they going to be indoctrinated? Will they show up with purple hair and 3 earrings and tattoos and tell me about communism? Because so many of us have had friends. Sir, I've got friends that have go, okay, wait a minute. I sent my kid off to school. He came back such a progressive, liberal, communist, Marxist. I don't know what to do with them anymore. And it's more than one of my buddies that has this conversation with me. So I wanted you to come on and talk to us about Young Americans Foundation, Young Americans for Freedom, and the importance of that in these kids' lives on these campuses.
Yeah, no, well, you're absolutely right. And we hear it all the time from parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, other adults who say exactly what you just mentioned, that their loved one, their son or daughter or whatever it might be, had a good sense, with common sense, conservative values, Christian values, whatever it might be, and they go to school and they're wiped out. Excuse me. They're just shocked. They don't know who it is anymore, and that's because on literally all but a handful of campuses, the indoctrination begins immediately. I mean, literally during the freshman orientation program, there's all sorts of things they do. They do a whole thing at many campuses where they have them take a step forward, step back, depending on whether they're male, female, white, black, whether their ancestors immigrated here recently or not, all these things. And they begin by telling them, look, now you've got an unfair advantage over all these people. It starts literally even before classes begin. So to me, the answer, you're exactly right about this. Young America's Foundation, the blanket organization for Young Americans for Freedom, which is the groups on campus, plus all the conferences we have, the event like we had at Mount Vernon with over 1,000 young college students there, events at the Reagan Ranch, bringing speakers to campus. All that's so important. And I say, we're obviously biased. We think YF.org, if people are interested, is the best spot. But in the end, whether it's us or somebody else, do not let your loved one go to college without wrapping them, giving them the support and the attention they need, like-minded young people around them. Because if you don't, they're going to come back different. And at least if you're people like you and I, we don't want that.
Governor Scott Walker joining us right now here on News Radio WRVA. Sir, here's my point of view. It's hard being a conservative sometimes because you look at popular culture. And I say this on the radio, people get mad at me, but the left controls pop culture right now. They control Hollywood, they control music, they control television, the media, and academia. And in academia, it's overwhelming. I know this. I've got a college kid. He tells me about the teachers trying to indoctrinate him, the other kids that try to silence him. And I know just as a conservative adult, sometimes you feel like you're crazy and you're the only one and you feel isolated. Imagine being an 18-year-old kid living in the dorm for the first time, how isolated you would feel if you show up going, I love America, and everybody else is saying, hey, let's go down and see the DSA speaker and Hassan Piker.
Well, it's exactly right. And they play on authenticity and fairness. And all our research shows that those are overwhelming factors for any young person. And the left's done a good job of, I always say, fairness, whether it's taxes, is fairness. Why not a flat tax? If you make 100 times more than me, you pay 100 times more. You make 10 times less, you pay 10 times less. We don't play, unfortunately, that fairness game very well, but yet conservatives are the most fair in terms of just level the playing field. We want to give everyone an opportunity for freedom and prosperity. We need to make that case. When you look at other issues, like sadly, something even my kids who are a little bit older than your son who I met, who's just fabulous young man, but my kids thankfully were just out of school before the whole gender crazy stuff started. But I always say there's another issue of fairness. Would you want a 19-year-old woman compete against a pool full of 9-year-old girls? No, that wouldn't be fair. The same thing is true with letting a young man swim against women if you know they're built differently. That's not a fair issue. So fairness and authenticity. The other interesting thing, though, is it's really about intimidation. When I was governor and they sent 100,000 protesters to occupy our capital, not for an hour, not for a day, not for a week, but for a month. Why did they do that? They were trying to intimidate us. It didn't work, but that was their attempt, because it often does. With young people now, it may not be 100,000 protesters, but in the classroom, on campus, in the dorm, wherever it might be, even online, they're trying to intimidate. And that's why having these reinforcements through YF, again, YF.org, if folks are interested, are so important, because they get to our programs, they get to our conferences like the one you were at Mount Vernon, more than even the speakers. Is the most important thing is they look around, we hear it all the time, and they say, oh, I'm not alone. And we say, yeah, the data proves it. Number one answer when we ask nationwide, when we do polling, number one answer is not conservative, not liberal. There's more liberal than conservative. But the number one answer is moderate. And that tells me that most young people instinctively don't buy into the craziness. They're just intimidated from challenging it in the classroom or on campus. That's where YAF comes in.
I mean, it's the Heritage Foundation on campus. I think born in the 1960s. I was a member of the 1980s. And I'll tell you this, it's the one thing that gave me the courage to speak up to some of these liberal. I had a professor that during the summers he would go down and work with the Contras, the communists down in Nicaragua, and he would challenge me in class. And one of the reasons I had the courage of my convictions to stand up then and stand up now is because of my affiliation with YAF.
Well, and think about that. Ortega, that professor probably said, oh, he's a great champion of democracy.
100%.
Is that the guy that just canceled elections there, still in 40 years later? That's exactly it. And now when we talk about democratic socialism, today another great example is Venezuela, a country where Hugo Chavez came in and literally ran as a democratic socialist, took the country over, ruined the economy, had the government take over the oil and other industries, imprison his political opponents, collapse the media, and now you've got a place where he stayed in control and then Maduro until obviously President Trump's remarkable efforts. But there's just example after example that our young people need to know about.
You've done your job. You served your state. You've served this country. You can retire and do a lot of different things. You don't have to be in this fist fight every day for the heart and soul of these college kids that some people are trying to indoctrinate. Why do you do this? You've done your job. You've already served us. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I don't want everything slipping away. Whether it's the Commonwealth of Virginia, the state of Wisconsin, or other places across this country as a whole. I love America. The reason I took on the crap I did when I was governor, the reason I went through and faced up to a recall election and did all that we did there was simple. I wanted my sons, Matt and Alex, to grow up in a state and a country at least as great as the one I grew up in. And today that's even more so true, that I want your son and all the other young men and young women coming into college, starting in the high school this fall, even now in the middle school where we run programs. I want all of that generation to have that same access to the kind of freedoms and opportunities that you and I grew up with. People forget this. I mentioned, slipped and said Reagan, but that's because when I came of age, like you did, Ronald Reagan was our president. People forget that before Ronald Reagan, in the late 1970s, when we had hostages in Iran, when we had stagflation, which was both high unemployment and high prices, there were a lot of people at the time, not just on college campuses, but elsewhere, somehow thinking that maybe Soviet-style communism was better than American-styled capitalism. And Ronald Reagan came in and helped lead this country, helped bring our mojo back. He helped be not just patriotic again, but the hostages released. We pushed back into Soviet Union. Communism fell by the end of just after his second term. The economy took off to the largest economic boom in American history that lasted into not only past his administration, but the Bush and even in the Clinton. Those are things that can happen again, but they don't happen under Marxist, democratic, socialist, or communist viewpoints.
I'm going to remind you, if you're a parent that has a kid going away to school for the very first time, you're going to start getting a couple of telephone calls, and then you're going to feel like there's something just a little bit off, and that's the peer pressure that they feel by a lot of these left-wing professors and the groups that they're going to go on, and they're tabling out there, and they're doing this, and they're doing that. Talk to them about YAF. It's YAF.org. It's an organization because, again, I will tell you this. I worked on college campuses when I worked in college sports. I got a kid who goes to school. The peer pressure is overwhelming, and you're not there. You're not there to help them, for them to lean on when the rest of the kids in their dorms are all going, hey, let's go see Hassan Piker. Let's go see AOC. Let's go see Bernie Sanders. And if they stand there going, I don't think so, it's really hard to stand up to that peer pressure unless you have other people that will have your back. And if you're worried about that and your kid's out there and he feels that overwhelming pressure, look up YAF.org, and that's an organization. And again, it's a heritage foundation. I was a member of the 1980s. Governor Walker's doing such a great job keeping this thing going. It's something that you should talk to your kid about when they really start to feel that peer pressure of everything that they see in college. Governor, I appreciate you waking up this morning, joining me, and I hope we can get you on the program and some other members of the Young Americans Foundation. We have George Allen who joins us every Friday, but I think it's important that this is a fight for the heart and soul of this country, and it's going to begin and end with these college kids, because that's the future. That's the next generation. And right now, the left is trying everything they can to somehow pull the wool over their eyes and tell them something that's never worked before the history of mankind would somehow work here.
I agree. Thanks for having me on. And one last thing I'll tell folks, if they're listening and you think, oh, these kids are too young to be in this battle. James Monroe was 18. Alexander Hamilton was 21. James Madison was 25. And Thomas Jefferson was 33 on the day they signed Jefferson's drafted document, the Declaration of Independence. So you're never too young to fight for freedom. YF.org, or actually an easy thing to tell young people if you're listening, or if you want to pass it on, YAF TV on YouTube. It's our YouTube channel, over 2 million subscribers. It's a great way if someone's really kind of trying to figure it out, watch YAF TV on YouTube, and it'll open their eyes.
Sir, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Governor Scott Walker joining us here on News Radio WRVA. Today's program is brought to you in part by our friends at 8+ Windows. So